if they're lucky enough to get into detox, and they do 3 to 10 days, and they get clean, and there doesn't happen to be a treatment bed available for them when they finish, they're discharged to a homeless shelter, often across the street if it's in the downtown east side. They're in the shelter with the same people they used with before they went to detox. What do you think the odds are they stay clean for more than a night? They're not very high. An awful lot of them go back to ground zero at that point. So what works? What's the solution? What about, instead of bringing the client to the treatment, we bring the treatment to the client? And that's the core idea of treatment at home. It has several advantages. If the client is dually diagnosed, meaning they have both mental illness and addiction problems, they can be dealt with living in their SRO, living at their housing. They are disqualified from many drug treatment centers because they have these mental illnesses, and they're disqualified from many mental health facilities because they have addiction. But by treating them at home, we can manage to deal with it. The results of treatment at home, by and large, are the same or better as the results from inpatient treatment. And depending on the model chosen, treatment at home can cost the same or less than inpatient treatment. But the most important part is whether the government fails and the health system fails the client, or the client messes up and relapses, it doesn't cause homelessness. They're still housed. So they have the freedom to have the same kind of progress and steps back that we have with any other kind of recovery from any other kind of disease. The third piece that works is community support. There's a saying in a lot of treatment places: it doesn't matter how you got here, it matters how you leave here. What they mean by that is the toughest part for most addicts, and I'm told for a lot of mentally ill as well, is to reintegrate with society at the end. You've been homeless, you've been through this personal struggle, and now you have to go out and be normal one day. So we can do this. We can build supportive housing. This is the Lux. This is opening next week, by the way.
It's already open.
It's officially opening. Thank you, Garvin. It's officially opening next week, but you're right. There's already quite a few people
The deluxe.
When we talk about supportive housing, what are we talking about? We're talking about an apartment that's roughly the size of a one-car garage. It has a full bath and kitchenette. It has on-site services. At the very least, security and some outreach worker is there on a regular basis. It costs us about $300,000 per suite to build, and it usually takes about 10 years by the time it's planned and put in the ground. We can do this, too. Modular housing. This is like a horizontal SRO. It's like a motel. It still has security and food service. Because it is permitted on a temporary basis instead of a permanent basis, the permitting process can often be months instead of years. And because the permit is annual, the neighbors gain more control. If the place is a problem, they can resist it and insist it get moved at some point. Also, it's about $50,000 per suite instead of $300,000 per suite. We can do this, and I want to credit Judy Graves, who's in the room for this idea, as well as a lot of these others. We can open rooming houses across the province. There was a time when many, many people in Canada lived in rooming houses, which is a place where maybe there was a dinner on the table and you rented a room and you had a sort of put-together family. This is not supportive housing. It's not low-barrier housing. It's market housing. We can do this, not-for-profit housing. There is a huge gap, as most of you know, between an SRO room and a condo. There's a huge gap between $400 or $500 a month and $400,000 or $500,000 just to get in. We need to build housing that fills that gap. On to treatment. We can do this. This is one of the most exciting things that's about to happen in Vancouver. So we know we need to treat people at home, but because we haven't been doing it, we don't know what our best practices are. We don't actually know how to treat people at home in ways that work really well. There is, however, a program coming to Vancouver. It's going to be announced in the next few months called At Home, or Chez Soi. It's a federal program happening in 5 cities, and it is an attempt to study what the best treatment at home will look like. In Vancouver, they're going to choose 300 homeless and mentally ill individuals and put 100 into a plan called Assertive Community Treatment, put 100 into a plan called Intensive Case Management, and 100 into a made-in-Vancouver on-site model at the Bosman Hotel. At the end of this, we will have real observations about what works better than other options in terms of at-home treatment. And we will have staffs in place ready to train others on how to do that. And we can do this. Crisis centers, also sometimes called urgent care centers. We talked earlier about the case where a policeman is called and the ambulance is called. There are a lot of individuals, homeless individuals as well as the rest of us, who fall in this funny middle category. They haven't broken a law. They don't need to go to jail. There's no benefit of taking them to jail. And their case may or may not require medical treatment. It's hard to tell. At the moment they contact the police officers, they're a mess. But if the police officer takes them to the hospital, the police officer has to wait there until the hospital makes a decision on the psychiatric competency of that individual. That can wipe out the rest of a police shift. It can often be the same case for the ambulance driver. So the idea of a crisis center, urgent care center, is that it's some alternative to hospital, some place people could be taken. They have professional medical care, as well as professional psychiatric care. They have detox services available. If they were just a little too drunk and were fine and reasonable 2 hours later, they could walk out if they chose. If they needed more services and wanted to avail themselves of the services there, they could get them. But the police and ambulance drivers can leave once they've properly checked the person in, dramatically reducing the local tax burden, and ideally providing better services for the individual. We can do this, walk-in detox. We talked earlier about how many phone calls it takes to get into detox. What if you could walk in detox whenever you're ready? I guarantee you, every addict I see out there has an hour every day when they're ready to quit. But if they have to make a phone call back the next day, call back the next day, they wound up going back to using. What if on that hour they're ready, they could walk in through an open door to a detox center? What if they could dial a phone call and have someone pick them up and take them in when they're ready? And what if huge focus of the detox center was not only detox, but connecting to the housing? So even if they fail at detox, and many do, at least they go into housing where they can start to get more comfortable, safer, and have a better chance of connecting with treatment down the road. We can do this. We can fund recovery houses. Recovery houses are controversial. There's quite a few of them across the suburbs in the Fraser Valley. They're private institutions where addicts go and live for 3, 6, 9 months, a year in a sort of therapeutic community and try to get clean. There is an issue with them when they deteriorate, but if we as a government were starting to license, train, and inspect them, possibly to top up the welfare funding in exchange for that inspection, we might make a lot of progress with them. Also, an awful lot of them are 12-step based and might make ideal faith-based projects. And we can do this, supported employment. Supported employment is a program that exists but is very lightly funded at the federal level. It is real work, not training or handicap workshops. It applies to people who have long-term disabilities as well as people who are in recovery. They work in an integrated setting, the same workplace we do, but they would have a counselor they can meet with on a regular basis. They may have some additional services, someone who helps them manage that transition into work. So, thank you for listening. In a few minutes, we're going to go upstairs and kind of talk about what you can do. And I want to kind of issue you a challenge for just a moment. Please don't give money. There are enough people out there making donations, and we should be able to pay this out of the tax savings we're getting from treating homelessness the way we are. I would urge each of you to think about giving a little bit of your time to some project that you devised tonight upstairs on the flip charts. And my promise to you is that if you do that, you'll have the same experience that everyone else I know who gives time to this issue has. You'll feel like you got more than you gave at the end. You're going to feel a huge benefit yourself from having given your time to this, and you will have helped create an environment in which political actors and others can actually solve homelessness in Vancouver. I want to thank the photographers who donated their work. There's a huge list here. This large list is folks who took pictures for the Pivot Project, and if you don't know of it, they have a table outside. I urge you to check it out and to buy the calendar. And I want to thank, again, the Taï Museum.